honestly, when I saw her sitting in his lap, my first, I guess, thought was, what the hell? You broke up marriages, you broke up relationships, and I'm like,
Today's date is January the 5th, 2023. It's a Thursday. I'm at the LaGrange Police Department conducting an interview with Lieutenant Mark Cavender in regards to an OPS or internal review that I've been directed to conduct regarding the supervisor retreat that occurred in November of 2022. The supervisor retreat began on Monday, November the 14th and ended on Wednesday, November the 16th, 2022. All right, Lieutenant Cavender, did you attend the supervisor retreat this year?
yes.
And where was that at, sir?
Bannon Mills, which is, I think was it Whitesburg, Georgia?
All right, where we've traditionally had
Yes.
that. Okay. All right, and can you tell me just generally when class began on that Monday?
Yeah,
And
we had to be there on site, I want to say at 12 o'clock, just before lunch.
All right. All right, so on Monday, November the 14th, the class obviously ended, as you said, between 4:45 and 5 o'clock. Can you tell me specifically what you did after class?
Right at the end of class, we were given room assignments, given room keys for our rooms. Once I had my room key, I went and moved my car because my car was parked at the bottom of the hill where the classroom is. So I moved my car because I was in a cabin basically up towards the top.
All right, and just approximately how long were you guys at the restaurant?
Okay, we were probably there hour and a half.
Okay.
There was a lot of people, so.
While you guys were at the restaurant, were there were people consuming alcohol within
Yes.
dinner? Okay. All right.
Some, not everyone.
All right. Can you tell me, just best as your recollection, who was purchasing who actually consumed alcohol at that time? Drinks.
It's really going to be hard to say. I was sitting there with Sergeant Lohr, and I think it was Sergeant Butler, and we were not drinking.
Mm-hmm.
I know Sergeant Noles was drinking. Lieutenant Kirby was drinking. Sergeant Clower. Sergeant Wheeler.
While you were there. Okay. All right. So you guys were there an hour and a half. While you were at the restaurant, was there any behavior or anything that would have led you to believe that there were any problems or excessive drinking, any disorderly behavior or anything?
No, Lieutenant Kirby had, I think he had a little bit too much to drink, but I mean, he was not disorderly by any means. I mean, if anything, everybody was having a good time. We were in the back room of Taco Mac by ourselves because we had such a large table, talking about different things. But I actually was sitting there at the table for a minute talking with Sergeant Noles about, I don't know if it's her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend. We got to tell about Clayton, Sergeant Bryant.
Okay.
I don't even remember exactly how the conversation got started. We talked for just a few minutes about that, and then something was said from Captain Fowle to Sergeant Noles about this time a year ago, I didn't even want you to work for me, or something like that. And it was, again, like it was out of left field, nowhere, and it was, what are we talking about here? Well, Sergeant Noles, by now, she's gotten a little bit loud. And
was she loud because she was aggravated, or
I don't know if it was because she was aggravated or because she was getting drunk.
Okay. You indicated earlier, though, she went, Sergeant Noles Rebecca Noles went with you guys to Taco Mac, so she was one of the ones that had something to drink.
Yeah,
at Taco
she was drinking at Taco
Okay,
Mac.
when she got back there, what was her state?
She seemed fine. Like I said, she and I sat there at the table and had a conversation for, when I say the table, there's 2 or 3 little picnic table, like, I don't know, this deck. And we talked about Sergeant Bryant, because Becky, Sergeant Noles, had worked for me when she was in SIU. She'd worked for me when she was a detective up here. So we've known each other for quite a while. And everything, she seemed fine. Then that comment was made about him not wanting her to work for him, which, in my opinion, seemed like it come from nowhere. She starts saying, well, something along the lines, well, are you disappointed now if I let you down now or something? So they start this conversation back and forth. I get up. When I get up, I walk over to the banister, and that's where, again, Sergeant Jones, Sergeant Sloniker, I'm going to say Sergeant Clower, we're standing there, and we're standing there talking. And from being in these, you get a bunch of police officers together, no matter what venue we're in, we start talking about cop stuff. So we're talking about different things related to work or whatever, and everybody's doing their own thing. People are continuing to drink. At this time, I haven't had anything to drink. It was only later. I took a couple of sips of the homemade wine, and I think it was Chris gave me like a little thimble of that moonshine he had, which I couldn't stomach that stuff.
Okay.
But as we're standing there, I feel a nudge, and it's John Sloniker, and he says, look, and that's when I turn around, and I see Becky is now sitting in File's lap. And
how long has that been since they had that conversation? Was the conversation, did it appear to be confrontational when you got up from the table?
No.
I mean, was there a reason that you left? Was it making
I
you
was
uncomfortable?
sitting here,
What was it?
File was sitting here, Becky was sitting here. So as they're talking to each other, it's like I'm in the middle,
Right.
and I don't have anything to do with this. I don't know what y'all are even talking about. Exit stage left, back into my own world.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, it didn't seem confrontational. It seemed like 2 loud, inebriated people having a conversation.
Okay.
That's what it sounded like to me. So I turn around. That's when I see Becky sitting in File's lap. And
How long between that conversation, I guess, that they started in when you observed? Had it been like an hour?
No.
Or they continued to drink?
I'd say maximum 15, 20 minutes.
Okay.
Give or take. I left one time to go use the bathroom, come back, so it wasn't immediately, but it was some minutes later.
Okay.
Honestly, when I saw her sitting in his lap, my first, thought was, what the hell? And I initially took my phone and snapped a picture of him, which, do we talk about deleting it now, or?
Sure. You can go ahead and tell me what.
Well,
go ahead with the story, and then you kind of chronologically tell me how you became.
So I turned around to see them. Initially, I took the picture, and and then I realized it wasn't just a sit down and get back up thing. She still continued to sit there. It's like, okay,
Was he seated in a chair on
he
the
was
table?
seated in a chair, and she was sitting on his knee, she was sitting in his lap. I mean, that's the only way to put it. She was sitting in his lap. I didn't want to see what was going on. I didn't know what was going on. So my little group, we kind of turned, but I mean, she continued to sit there. And I ended up going back across the table. I'm sitting down now on the other side of they're still like against your wall away from me. I'm sitting over here at this table. And she's still sitting there, and I don't know what they're talking about. I can't hear what they're talking about. They're really close to one another. I'm not going to say like kissing close, but they were close enough that you couldn't hear what they were saying to each other. He did have his hand kind of on the small of her back, the top of her butt, but I mean, it wasn't a rubbing motion, or it was there.
Okay.
That continued on for, I don't know, another couple minutes or whatever.
Could you tell if anybody else took notice of that other than?
Oh no, everybody there. It was the elephant in the room. I mean, you couldn't help but notice, because where they're at is literally in the center of the deck.
All right. At that time, tell me who all you remember being present, and I'll give you that list that, again, folks that attended. Okay. All right. I'm sorry to interrupt. Okay. So go ahead there.
So eventually they got up. When I say they, Becky and Captain File got up, and they actually moved over maybe 20, 25 feet away from everybody. Like I said, it's a pretty big deck. They were standing on a banister, leaning up against a banister, talking. Again, no idea what they were talking about. While they're over there, and they were over there for a while. So everybody else is still mingling, talking. There is a lot of drinking going on. But everybody was confined right there to that one area. Nobody was doing anything inappropriate that I could see other than what was going on over there. As I got ready to leave, I was walking down the deck, the catwalk on the deck, to somebody's room to use the bathroom. And I heard Becky crying as I was walking back by, which of course caught my attention, and I looked over, and I could see she was crying, and I could hear Captain File saying something along the lines of, "You single-handedly almost ruined my patrol division. You broke up marriages. You broke up relationships." And I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I don't want to be a part of this. I went back to under the deck, was getting ready to leave. I was standing there getting ready to leave whenever they broke up from where they were at. By this time, Becky is completely, she's drunk.
Okay.
She's drunk. She comes over and she actually ends up trying to sit down in two other people's laps.
Okay.
One of which was Sergeant Clower. Sergeant Clower looks at me like, and I'm not going to put words in his mouth, but what I took to mean like, help me. Because she kind of sat down in his lap, so I go over and grab her by the arm, pick her up, and sit her down in a chair. She eventually ends up in, she gets up and ends up in, was it Pritchett? I think it was Lieutenant Pritchett sitting on his, she's literally sitting on his knee, just kind of leaning back. And by now she's, in my opinion, passed out.
Okay.
I'm getting my stuff to leave, or about to leave. File had left, but then he come back because he had left his cell phone there. When he comes back to get his cell phone, I don't know what the conversation was between him and the people where he had left his cell phone. But then he comes over, like to where I'm standing, and he starts this singing kind of rendition, dancing of an old song called "Baby's Got Back." But he's going, "Becky's got back, Becky's got back," and she's out, so she don't hear what's going on. And I don't know what spurred that, what brought that on.
Well, how close was he to, and I'm assuming at that point, based on your description, that she's still sitting in Lieutenant Pritchard's lap when he comes back?
Yes.
Okay. And how close was he to them when that song began?
Oh, there was several people between him and her.
Okay.
There was several people. He wasn't close enough to have any contact.
Okay.
And at that point, when I left, everybody that I've mentioned with
what state would you say he was in at that point?
He was obviously intoxicated. There's no doubt he was intoxicated. He was still able to walk and function on his own, but and not knowing somebody's, I don't know somebody's level of how they handled their alcohol, but there was no doubt he was intoxicated.
Okay. All right. Could you tell, all right, so after that, you said what took place after you observed that? He got his phone?
He got his phone, got his cooler. Like I said, I know Lieutenant Butler had left just before me because he was walking up the hill and I was walking up the hill behind him. So exactly at what point, I think File left right behind me, but I think he was staying down here, so I don't know exactly which way he went. When I left, before I left, I was picking up trash that had been left out there, throwing trash away. Finally got to the point I was tired of cleaning up after everybody. I said, it kind of gotten...
when you say trash, what was it you were cleaning up?
Like beer cans, cups, stuff like that.
Okay.
Just, people standing around.
Did it appear that it was the gathering was kind of winding down at that time? Okay.
People were starting to gather their stuff to...
When you left, and you say when you left, Captain File left before you did, and then...
He left just before me or just after. I can't remember.
And you and Lieutenant Butler kind of left at the same time.
Yeah, he had left just a little bit ahead of me.
So when you guys left, who was left there? Everybody that you listed, were they still there, or
no? Some had already left. Like Sergeant Stevens, I know he had already gone. I don't know at what point When I left, Lieutenant Laura was still there, Lieutenant Pritchett, Sergeant Clower, Sergeant Sloniker, which I think he didn't have to go anywhere because his room was right there. He was talking about going to his room whenever I was leaving. I can't say that he did or that he didn't. I think Sergeant Jones was still there, maybe Sergeant Wheeler. But like I said, everybody was cleaning up after themselves, gathering whatever they had and getting ready to. It was 10:30.
Okay. How long had you guys been there? How long you'd been there?
Hour, 45 minutes,
Okay.
2 hours.
Okay. All right. So you left, and then what happened?
I left, went back to my room, cabin, whatever you want to call it. I'd already got my stuff ready. I said earlier, I took a shower before we went to eat. I didn't take a shower before we went to eat. I come back in, took a shower, shaved, all that for the next morning. Called my wife again, sat there and talked to her for a little while. And I was probably in the bed, going to sleep by 11.
Okay.